Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, and we are here at room 1600 at 20 Civic Center Plaza for the Public Safety Code Enforcement and Neighborhood Empowerment Meeting. And if we could all please rise for the pledge. You can join me. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. We have the clerk read roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Juan Villegas.
Present.
Councilmember David Peñalosa.
Present.
Okay, at this time we are going to open up the public comments. I've received two requests for speaking requests. So the first speaker is Esther Fonseca. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is an update regarding the loud music ordinance. The last meeting of the subcommittee that we had with Chief Valentin to address the enforcement of the loud music ordinance by Santa Ana PD was on August the 14th of last year. I last addressed this committee regarding the continuing problems of lack of enforcement of this ordinance by the officers on October the 1st of last year. This issue was given to Commander Claiborne to handle around the beginning of November of last year. I live in the largest neighborhood association in the city, Artesia Pilar. In the area surrounding my house, covering King Street to Bristol, 17th Street to Washington, and in almost 2.5 years and approximately 80 calls for service I have personally made regarding this problem, only one citation has ever been issued. I last made a call for service on Saturday, the 13th of April, a party in the front yard, DJ, tent, etc. But the officers are still not complying with department policy that the first responding officer takes responsible party information and the second officer issues a citation. As a matter of fact, in the majority of these calls, no contact is ever made with the residents. In the community, we call these officer drive-bys, the office which makes the situation worse, as the violators see and understand that there are no consequences for their actions. So on this Saturday night, the 13th of April, the party began at 5 p.m., ended at 10:55 p.m., 3 calls for service made by myself, 5 officers dispatched in a 6-hour period, and no contact was ever made with the residents by any of these officers until after the party was over. I have met with Commander Claiborne and spoken to him over the phone twice. We last met this last Friday. The meeting was productive. Chief Valentin stated priority is the handling of violent crimes in the city, and no one would argue with this policy. However, this has resulted in the officers disregarding the loud music calls, that is, not taking them seriously, because they only want to handle the serious calls. But loud music calls are also calls for service that affect our quality of life in our neighborhoods. Further, these calls will diminish substantially if violators are actually cited and have to pay fines. I therefore strongly urge Chief Valentin to change the current approach of emphasizing and rewarding only the officers who do their jobs well on violent and serious crimes. I strongly urge the chief to personally address this issue with his officers and then to begin recognizing the ones who do their job and actually cite the people on loud music calls. Finally, last year, during a meeting with Chief Valentin and Deputy Chief Kaminsky, we discussed the possibility of having a party car on weekends, that is, a unit designated specifically to handle only loud music calls. At the time, we were told that the department could not afford to do this due to a shortage of officers. But the reality is that the department cannot afford not to do this, especially as summer approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fonseca. Next speaker is Mr. Chris Schmidt. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. When I was looking at the agenda, I could literally speak on every single agenda item. But instead of doing that, I decided to talk about one thing that covers it all. It's a city-owned property at 625 South Cypress Street. Councilmember Peñalosa, I sent you an email regarding it. It's the old Cypress Street Fire Station. It's actually a historical property. I believe it's number 5 on the list of historical properties in Santa Ana. In 2016, a nonprofit was using that facility and they stopped using it. It's under the Parks and Recs Department. In the last 3 years, I've seen that building gutted, set on fire, dismantled by a homeless person, covered in graffiti, people stealing from it. That covers everything on this agenda. We don't have enough police officers, as Esther just pointed out. We don't have enough park rangers. This is a park property. They can't patrol it. Graffiti on the building, people stealing the wiring, homeless people inside there. This is an example that something's wrong in our city when we can't even protect our own historical properties that the city owns. I'm not calling out anybody. I appreciate everything city staff is doing, but graffiti is everywhere over the city. This morning, I reported 25 pieces of graffiti in my neighborhood using the city app. They were removed, but it's just 25 pieces too much. Homelessness has exploded in my neighborhood. Centennial Park, I was just here at the joint use meeting. The school district was complaining about all the homelessness in the park. There's a water channel that runs through Centennial Park. It's county property. They don't come out and enforce it. I've got to call dispatch to tell them they're under Edinger Avenue. The officers don't see them because they're underground, so they don't think they're there. The railroad tracks are just a complete, I just can't believe why our city in the last 3 years hasn't done anything. I believe Judge Carter is literally asking our city to sue Union Pacific. And I don't understand why we have to put up with the trash, the graffiti, the urine, the feces, the used needles, the people. Just, my friend Jennifer Pete owns a piece of commercial property at Main and Warner. She got fined because the homeless people were dumping trash on her property because they were cutting a fence that's owned by Park and Rec and trespassing onto their property. That's what we do. We don't go after the people that are causing the crimes. We go after the businesses that are raising money for our city. Councilmember Penaloza, you told us about the railroad tracks behind your business and how they set a fire there and it almost burned down the building. We know these things exist, but it doesn't seem like anything's being done about it. I'd appreciate it if we could all work together and try to make our city a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Do we have any more speaker requests? No more? Okay, seeing no more cards, we will close the public comments and move on to item number 1. Actually, let's take these out of order. We're going to go with item number 2 first, the appointment of chair and a vice chair. Councilmember Penaloza, would you like to nominate?
Yeah,
yourself?
I'll nominate you for chair.
All right, thank you. I'll accept. Well, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I nominate you as the vice chair of the committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Got that out of the way.
This is awkward.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so let's go to item number 1. It's approval of the minutes from October 1st, 2018 meeting. You were not here. I will make a motion to approve. You want to second that?
Yeah, second.
Okay,
I'll
all
sec-
those in favor
I'll second
say
that.
aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Wait,
We're going to go on to, that's the
Mr.
approval
Chair,
of the minutes? Yes, sir.
I understand that, but since I wasn't on this committee, then does it still?
We're not gonna-
I mean, I'm just
You can do it, but if you read them.
Okay.
You can, yeah.
got it.
If there was a issue, you can bring it up. Okay, very good. Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 3, which is the update on police recruitment and hiring. And with that, we have staff. We have Deputy Chief Esparza.
Good evening, council members. My name is Enrique Esparza. I'm here to present our current numbers, police officers. So you'll have before you a lot of numbers tonight, so please feel free to ask any questions along the way. I'm going to let you know where we're at currently, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. So we're currently at 318 sworn police officers. This includes 5 that are in the academy. And you can see how they're funded there, 370 through the general fund. Those 11 count the Civic Center and I believe the downtown patrol officers, and then the grant, the Homeland Security grant, covers two more sworn. So you see the total where we want to be, 383, and we're currently 318, so the vacancy is 65. Thus far through 2019, we've hired 4 police officers. That may sound low, but give me a minute and I'll get to where we're going and the pace, how it's going to pick up here, and again, where we want to get to. So those are 4 recruits who are currently in the academy. We've yet to hire any police laterals, but here's the big news. On April 29th, we have 8 new officers, recruits coming on. We anticipate 5 in the month of May, 5 in June, and that's based on where we're at in the backgrounds process, where we're at in the testing process, and those that we see forthcoming. So through June 30th, we anticipate having 22, and that's conservative. We actually have a little more, but again, I'm trying to stay on the lower side. So through June 30th, we should have 22 new hires. This year, we've had 4 officers retire. I believe 2 of those were through medical and 2 were just through retirement age. Another stat here that obviously limits the officers that we have out on the street are IODs, which is injured on duty. We have 7, which is actually a significant drop from last year when we had 16 throughout the year on injury on duty status. Off work is 5, light duty is 2. The off work are completely off work. They do not report. Those 2 light duty officers are 2 that are in the process of returning, and we have them doing light duty office work. So we currently have 5 in the academy. Those are the various class numbers that they're in. We have 5 trainees in the field training program. So throughout those 2 various stages, we have 10 officers. One of the big gains we've made from the previous years is these are the list of over 40 recruiting events that we actually go out to. They're hiring expos, military bases, various locations where some type of hiring is going on. And you can see the list here. So we're really, really aggressive. We've stepped up our game on our recruitment efforts. And we've made San Ana known all the way up to Bakersfield and beyond and all the way down to San Diego. And again, here's just a list of where we've been and where we will be throughout the rest of the year. Another big tool for us is obviously social media. This has gone above and beyond where we've been in years past. You can see various pictures there. The upper left corner is a recruiting expo. The right side is our recent, what's the word here? The inspection that we had. Sorry, Chief. And the bottom is just a bunch of our guys going out to the academy, doing the academy run with the new hires. Just another example of how we're promoting ourselves out there. So last year we had a very successful hiring expo directly in front of the police department. We intend to do that again on June 1st. We'll have all components of the department out there representing the various things that we do. Very much an open house, and we expect a very good turnout. Here is the key to how we're going to get to the numbers we want to get to. New to us this year is the National Testing Network. In years past, we had to schedule a date when people would come to a written exam that was administered by city personnel. That's now changed to an online testing that allows for applicants to sign up on their own, take the test online, and then we get the results from the testing company. We've also added 2 full-time background investigators to this year's budget and assigned 2 additional sworn investigators. We currently have 2 contract companies that hire our non-sworn, so that alleviates our officers from working on non-sworn positions. Much of these are folks that we have come in to do food and medical services at the jail. So again, we're not having a full-time background investigator. We have the companies do the ones that require a little less background investigation. And again, we've restructured the background so we have certain folks doing officers, certain doing corrections, because we have vacancies throughout the department. So not all of them are doing police backgrounds. We have some doing dispatchers, corrections, non-sworn positions, and police officers. This is our current structure. I think I failed to mention, so I oversee, amongst other things, the human resources, backgrounds and recruiting, the field training program, and the academy. Through here, you see 5 full-time positions that have been added, along with a part-time, not a civilian background investigator who we made a full-time. So in essence, we've brought on 5.5 FTEs. So last week at the council meeting, one of the council members requested this number here. It's the average officers per capita, per thousand, if you will. This paints a pretty good picture as to where we're at and obviously where we need to be. So with our population, we're currently at 0.94 officers per 1,000 residents. The average is well above that, and we intend to get to at least, when we reach max capacity, we should be at about 1.25. So that's the goal there. And again, you see some comparable cities and where they are currently, and we're well below the average. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief Esparza. Do we, Councilmember Penalosa, do you have any questions on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out the social media efforts that you guys are doing. Are you guys sponsoring or using any money to promote these posts on social media versus just posting? Because I mean, just yesterday I almost applied as a Border Patrol agent because of how often I see it sponsored, and it's just everywhere I look. Or even Anaheim Police. I see Anaheims constantly all day long because they're sponsoring the content. Are we doing anything like that, Mr. Esparza?
I'm a little confused by the question. I don't think so. Putting money behind.
Yeah, putting money behind the posts. That way they're boosted and they're constantly on top of people's feeds. In whatever region you want to target, you could set it for demographics. You could do 25 to 35-year-olds. You could do very target specific groups that you would want to target, or regions in the area where they would constantly see it on their feed versus just posting it once and having 30 people see it and then never being seen again. So maybe that's something that you guys I would recommend.
Yes.
Is putting money behind these posts. It usually doesn't take much, a couple $100 a week, a month, just to constantly be promoting these hiring efforts. Brings me back to I've seen Anaheim Police, LA Police, LA Sheriffs, and Border Patrol is constantly, and not because they're posting every 10 seconds, but it's because they'll make one post, put some money behind it. That way it's constantly on top of people's feeds, and you could target specific demographics.
We have done this in the past. We're not currently doing, but we will get back to it. And as you mentioned, it's very, the money is well spent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Chief Esparza, so going back to the first slide on this one right here, the 11 under the special revenue funds in the Civic Center, is that from the Civic Center Authority? Is that where that money's coming from?
7 of those. 7 of those, sir, and then the other 4 are the downtown patrol.
7 of the special revenue funds. Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
how many people do we have assigned to the Civic Center right now?
I believe 7, yes, sir.
To the
It is
Civic
7.
Center Plaza?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Got it. And our quality of life team, how many people do we have assigned to that? Is that from the same group?
Okay. Yeah, we have one assigned full-time, but then additional officers are attached to the team depending on what they're doing citywide.
Got it. Excuse me. Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Chief, any other comments on this item?
Just briefly, as was covered at the council meeting from last Tuesday night, this is recruiting, hiring, and retaining is not an exact science. It is a moving target, and it's not impacting just our police force. It's really an issue across the United States. To answer the question on why we have such a high vacancy rate compared to others, maybe neighboring agencies, is unfortunately because of the way that we've approached budget. Having said that, we have what today is the right team in place, led by Deputy Chief Esparza, to actually get to our goal. Our target for this calendar year is 50 new hires, be it recruits and or laterals, 50. That's our target, and we feel pretty comfortable that we'll be able to get there or really darn near it. So we hope to report that out at the end of the year to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
I have a question.
Vice Chair.
Chief, with the police officers hired so far this year is 4, and I know that Mr. Esparza briefly touched on why that was 4 versus, when you see April 29th, you're going to do 8, May 5, June 5. Was there just not a push initially in the beginning of the year to hire or?
Yeah, good question. The push has been, this is our number one issue in the police department in terms of addressing staffing for police officers. What happens is, in this case, it was actually a strategic decision to actually delay and cluster to get more officers started at the same time. These are all recruits, the 8 that'll be hired next Monday. And so that was, I know, in discussing with the deputy chief, that was a strategic decision. We also had, I believe it was 4 laterals that were scheduled, 3 laterals and 1 academy grad that were scheduled to be hired with this group or at about the same time. And of course, the human element comes into play. A couple of those officers were involved in on-duty incidents, and they need to be investigated. So no reputable agency is going to hire lateral police officers that have an administrative case pending. So that number of 22 between now and June 30th really is probably more closer to 24, which already exceeds all of the hires for 2018 at 22.
Now, when you say these 8 are going to start on the 29th, is that they're going to start the hiring process, or they've gone through background, they've gone through the academy, they've gone through whatever other agency they went through, and they're going to start training on the 29th?
All recruits, right?
Their official hire date is next week. 2 are laterals. Actually, one's a lateral, one's an academy graduate that we hired out of the academy. Those 2 are ready to go into the FTO process. The other 6 will begin the academy shortly thereafter.
Okay, so those wouldn't really be 8 officers on the street. It'd be 6 going to the academy, and then okay.
Yes, sir.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Deputy Chief Esparza. And we're going to move on to item number 4, the update on the park ranger recruitment, and that is also DC Esparza and Director of Park Recs and Recs Services, Lisa Rudloff.
Thank you. So we also handle, through our backgrounds and recruiting unit, the park ranger recruitment, which unfortunately hasn't been very successful. We currently have 1 person in backgrounds. A couple months ago, we had one that was ready to be hired, and the very last minute, he decided he didn't want to do it. We believe there's a different direction to handle the park ranger assignment. We're just not getting the attention that we'd like in this position. Again, hiring, we just had the physical agility test this past Saturday. 2 people showed up, 1 made it through, will move on to background, and just starting a very long process. So we're not being very successful in our recruitment efforts through that.
I see. Vice Chair Penalosa, any questions on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. And yeah, that's troublesome. Not being able to hire, or people don't want to apply. We don't even have a paper on it. So regarding the application of the standards are pretty much the same as for regular police officer, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and I think that's where the disconnect is. People realize I can make a lot more as a police officer and handle a little more responsibility, but why not just take the extra step to police officer?
Correct. And Chief Valentin, have you had any ideas about how we can fill those positions, park ranger or some different type of recruitment? Or I know one of the council members and one of our colleagues talked about security in the parks, something.
Right.
But we're talking about this. These areas where some of the parks they're frequented by gang members or from some bad guys out there,
right.
And it can be a little dangerous. You have people out there who are trying to enforce laws. I mean, these folks that are those types of people understand the difference what a security person can do and
Right.
the difference between a police officer. So I don't want to put them in danger or increase the liability for the city. Also, do we have any ideas or?
Yes, so just to cover the historical, my budget manager is here. And so he was previously with Parks and Rec Department, and the recruitment and retention, hiring and retention of park rangers has been an ongoing issue for 16, 17 years. This is nothing new. So that's doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's just our reality. So when we're talking about recruiting a park ranger, if the threshold is the same to be a police officer, what you find is people are going to invest their efforts in becoming a police officer.
Right.
It's very unique individual that truly just wants to work patrolling a park or the parks. You find those folks more in maybe zoo service or what have you, or state parks and that type of thing. So that's been frustrating. We've looked at different training modalities so that we can maybe lower, without lowering the standard of person we would hire, lower the requirement of training, for example. That hasn't worked for us either. So it's still a struggle. And like I said, it's been going on for many, many years. So recently, in looking at this issue, and then we also went through a phase where we hired and retained retirees, 960s. These are retired Santa Ana police officers that remained with the city as part-time park rangers. Very effective, and they were able to deliver services. They were armed, obviously, all with about 30 years of experience in Santa Ana, a lot of experience. That worked well. We had to do away with the 960 employees because of PERS regulation. That was the position of the city attorney's office, so we followed that direction. And then we started to begin to try recruit again. We had one strong candidate, as was mentioned, and he decided at the last moment he wasn't interested. So an immediate option is we still need to respond to the safety need. And when I hear from Parks and Rec that it's a concern, especially at night, locking and securing our parks, my recommendation, to answer your question specifically to the previous city manager, was to hire private security. So they would work essentially what the school district has in place with their district safety officers. They are not trained, instructed, or hired to engage kids that are committing crime, for example. They're hired to observe and report. Same thing with private security. We could have them in parks. We could have them secure the bathrooms, for example. And if they see something, say something. They would call the police, and we would respond. That's the way that deliverable would work.
You know, Chief, the other day we had the Youth and Education Committee here, and the parks fall under that category. And we were speaking with the director, and we had some of the security that were hired to unlock and lock the restrooms at the parks. We have 44 parks, and some of them were being assaulted. And some of them don't even want to go out and do the job because it's just too dangerous. If you have a homeless person sleeping inside the restroom, security is not, charged with taking them out. And, half these guys carry knives or shanks.
Right.
And it's dangerous. So you need a qualified person to go in there who knows how to deal with a situation like that, or you got a 5150 inside the restroom having a bad day.
Yep.
So that's why I'm kind of a little iffy about security, because we're already having those issues just with people securing the restrooms and opening up the restrooms. So that's, you mentioned one thing about the Santa Ana PD retired guys and having a problem with PERS, but if we were to go and recruit retired law enforcement from other agencies who are from other retirement systems, then they could qualify and the PERS wouldn't account. Would that be, am I accurate or?
You are absolutely accurate. For example, the county sheriff's department, our neighbor here, we could target recruitment there and see if retirees are willing to come and work in our parks, because they're a different retirement system. So we wouldn't have the PERS issue. And I did discuss this with the city attorney recently, and of course that's one option. And there's yet another that we would, I could circle back and discuss with her regarding PERS, actually using annuitants. But it would have to be under very specific guidelines that we could do that. But the county would certainly be an option.
Boosters, yeah.
Yeah. Again, when you're talking about a 30-year retired deputy, it's just a matter of finding the right people that are willing to do that work for the money that we pay.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, speaking from working from the department, I understand if you have a gentleman who's been working in the jail for 20 years, and now you want to put him out on patrol type of duties, you might have a bit of a problem for them to adjust and know what the current laws are, since their duties most of the time they were spent in working custody.
Right.
And I understand those concerns. Vice Chair Penalosa.
Yeah, I had a couple comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Valentin, I'm not comfortable either with the idea of kind of hesitant to go down that route with the private security company to police or observe our parks, just because it at the same time that we have our residents using these parks, I want to make sure that the residents know that it's a familiar face. It's the city that's looking or watching out for them. It's our employees. It's there putting up. I feel like putting up private security in there causes a disconnect between can I trust this person? Can I not? Just because from the experiences that I've had personally with private security, it's not always the most people with integrity or respect with the department. Now, I was asking, do the park rangers, for the most part, they don't carry guns, correct?
No, they would carry guns.
So it's kind of like animal control. They don't carry guns, right?
They do not. I mean, they have certain weapons to put down animals,
Right.
but they don't carry a sidearm.
Do the animal control officers, do they go through the same rigorous hiring process as police officers?
They go through a background and testing, but not as police officers. The police officers go through 8 different batteries of tests, and that's state mandated.
Have we looked at maybe, again, I don't want to lose that quality, but also downgrading the park ranger, just to come back to what Deputy Chief Esparza was saying about having difficulty hiring because of how strict the hiring is for a park ranger. If a park ranger isn't going to carry a weapon, kind of like animal control, and isn't going to be a sworn police officer, why not kind of bring it down to the level of an animal control officer? That's kind of wears the Santa Ana badge, drives around in the Santa Ana unit, something familiar, but at the same time is maybe we could attract hiring if it's easier to go down that route.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and my suggestion for private security isn't long-term permanent. I mean, when I'm hearing, when the director brings me or the city manager brings me issues of immediate concern right now, securing our parks at night, an immediate response is, yeah, we'll send police officers if they're available, if they're not going from priority call to priority call. But we got to address the issue. So that's where the suggestion came up, as we could retain private security to go and secure parks, the bathrooms at night. The only caution with unarmed, for example, and this has been batted around as well, again, this is a 16, 17-year problem, is we talked about PSOs, police service officers, right? They wear our Santa Ana PD uniform unarmed. So the same issue applies there when they have a 5150 in the bathroom, or there's a homeless person with a shank. All that applies the same. They would be calling us for a response. And that's what a security or anybody would do. That's what we would direct them to do. If someone's armed or someone's acting irrational, or we need a police response, an armed police response.
And in that case, I would expect the park ranger to have a radio and call for whatever help is needed.
Yep.
But at the same time, the presence alone would deter that. I think it would deter that type of those type of people or activity to be occurring in our parks. If our parks are constantly being, a unit is constantly driving through them throughout the day and night, and the presence is there, not 24/7 obviously, but have a couple park rangers that could do this, it would deter that activity and that and I think that could help. And when it comes to situations like that, obviously have some kind of radio and that we could call for the necessary help.
Makes sense.
Chief, have you had conversation with the Sheriff's Department Training Academy, see what they do their department, Under Sheriff Peterson, maybe they would be interested in having some retired sheriff's deputies want to work. But then again, we have to look at, well, how long are they going to be here? If they're retired, they're going to work 5 years or they're going to work 10 years.
If they give us 5 years, we're doing good. But go ahead.
Yeah.
So to speak to your discussion about the sheriff's department, when this was my problem 3, 4, 5 years ago, we tried just about everything everywhere to get anybody to put in for this job. I went to OCSD specifically saying, any of your retired guys? Same concept that we used to have. OCSD, the individuals interested in working had predominantly and continue to go to the college school districts. That's where we've lost a tremendous amount of people interested in continuing working. I also reached out and had discussions with both LAPD and LASD because they have different retirement systems. We got very, very few people interested in coming to Santa Ana to be park rangers on a retirement basis. And what I was informed was when Santa Ana PD officers retired, there was a vested interest in continuing to want to serve the city. It was a good way for a retiree to continue to be here and still feel engaged. However, outside entities who may or may not have worked as hard as the Santa Ana police officers have worked throughout their career weren't as interested in going out and working diligently within the parks. There were other jobs that were easier that they could take on in their retirement. So I can tell you personally, I reached out to various different factions within OCSD, LAPD, and LASD as this thing continued to be mired in non-interest, and we just received very, very little interest.
Deputy Chief Kaminsky, thank you for that that information. I did not know you were involved in that. I don't like to waste a lot of time on this. If we've done this, a good extension, and tried, and there was no takers, so be it. Then we concentrate more on officers, but we do have to do something about our parks. I'm even willing to entertain the fact of armed security at the parks for a short time until we could. I'm iffy on that because carrying a firearm is a lot of responsibility. And sometimes the folks that are carrying this kind of equipment aren't trained or self-disciplined, and they're not professional, security, I guess you could say. They meet minimum requirements, and so I guess we can just continue and send this back to you, and maybe we can come up with another solution. But I think it's good discussion to have, and maybe we can. Continue this one more time. Yeah, we have to figure out something. But this thing with the police officers, I understand the push for the entire city, and with what Deputy Chief Kaminsky was saying, it's just wow.
Yeah, and it's also
it's a lot of information. Yeah,
it's also a timing issue. We can reapproach the sheriff's department. We can certainly do that, and maybe people are interested now, and look at that. In the interim, I will have a follow-up conversation with the city attorney because she did begin to share that there was, like I said, a possibility to bring in annuitants, 960s, our own retirees. That would be ideal. We have upwards of, I want to say, a half a dozen or so at one time. And they even had a rank structure, a sergeant, and then the actual park rangers. So
Chief, how many park rangers would you say you would need right now if you were to hire a group? What would be the ideal number, approximately?
I mean, you'd start with at least 2 teams of 6 and split the week. I mean, just kind of round numbers. And the 960 would be ideal.
So we're looking at about a dozen folks that we need to hire, and then maybe some extra for people on vacation or people that are ill and so on.
You wouldn't get 24/7 coverage, but you would certainly get a lot more than you're getting right now. That's for sure.
Very good.
Yeah.
Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead. Absolutely.
And make sure to, Chief, if you could communicate with Lisa as well. I wouldn't want to see what also kind of concerns me about the private security is wanting to have the Parks and Rec department take it over, just because I know that the Parks and Rec departments are running very thin, and with their budget and the staff that they have. But I know I've met with Lisa maybe 3-4 months ago when we initially discussed. I was trying to get as creative as possible as to how to secure our parks today, and not wait for all these different hiring obstacles. And we were thinking having designated neighbors that live across the street, but then that opened up the whole security issue and liability with possibly getting hurt. So that was out of the question. But if you want to make sure when you do look at you make sure you work with, you guys work together, Lisa, and to see what
Absolutely.
you could, what exactly, where are the key areas that are needed, and so we could start there at least. The ones that
Director Rudolph?
Absolutely, thank you. We are most concerned right now with locking up our restrooms in the evening. We've had, and then any kind of gates we have into our parking lots. I've worked at another agency that we used unarmed enforcement, and it actually worked out. But it was a different community. It was in Northern California, but they would report out to I worked with the county sheriff's department, and so they would patrol during the evening, and the county sheriffs would patrol at night, would take care of it at night. So something that we need to just think about and at least get ourselves someone out there now to start locking up those restrooms, because my staff has been injured, they've been jumped. There's a lot of things going on out there that we need to really protect our employees. And so we'll work together and try to get something. And I know there's an RFP out right now, or just about to go out, in regards to locking up restrooms and that, things of that nature. So,
Is that what is the title of the position? Or is security, or is it Parks and Rec?
It's an RFP for unarmed security guard services at various city restroom facilities. So,
Okay.
I think that's being completed here soon.
And that's private security?
It would be private security, yes.
Very good. We will revisit this then.
Yeah. Last thing, did you ever find out about getting the self-locking doors or locks? Is that part of this?
That's a great question. Our restrooms are sometimes situated in a very blocked off where a police car can't drive by and see the front of the restroom. We can also design our restrooms to not have actually a restroom to go into. There's doors on the outside, there's sinks on the outside, and they're very popular. They're prefab restrooms, so we need to look at that design. And then also there's locking mechanisms that the doors will lock at a certain time. You can program them. They're not foolproof, but at least there's something that will at a certain time lock them up. And then there's lights that will go on at night, so if an officer is driving, they can see that if a light is on, someone's in that restroom and they need to go take a look at it. Also at the bottom of the door, they cut out maybe 2 inches, so you're going to see the light spilling out and such. So we can look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We will move on to item number 5, the graffiti report. We have staff on that.
Good evening. I'm just going to stand up here because I'm over at the table. If that's okay with everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay. My name is Danelle Mercado. I am the Assistant Public Works Maintenance Manager. I'm here, basically, I was asked to come and talk about the graffiti stats over the last couple of years, but I would like to, for Councilmember Penalosa, because you are fairly new to the council, I wanted to just give a quick overview of our graffiti removal program.
Please.
There we go. So our graffiti removal program, basically, we are in charge of removing graffiti citywide, off our right-of-way, anything visible from the right-of-way, and we also do graffiti removal in the park. 5 days a year we have graffiti removal. Thank you. Let's see here. So we do color matching. We call it no graffiti scars. Oh, that's even better. I get to hold. Now I got to control two things. Is that better? Can everybody? Is that better? Great. Okay, so we do color matching. Basically, we call that. You'll see sometimes in other cities and maybe smaller communities where you'll see a lot of square outs. We call those graffiti scars. So when we went out to bid probably back in 2009, 2010, we put in our RFP for color matching to cover those scars so that you don't see, because sometimes the scars are just not as attractive either as well. So the color matching really does well. We like that. We have six technicians, one full-time dedicated to the 40 parks. The other 5 work, we have the city kind of in 5 zones, so we have 5 technicians out there 5 days a week. On the weekends, we only have 1 technician. So the weekends we have less coverage, but during the week we have 5 every day with that 6th person doing just parks. And they assist each other as needed. We also, through the program they provide, we have an app as well as all our database that they provide for us, which basically when the contractor goes out there to remove graffiti, he's taking pictures of the graffiti that's being removed, and that's all being identified. They do it on the spot by name, moniker, and then it's categorized. And those pictures are stored as evidence and accessible for PD for when they are apprehending graffiti criminals. So let's see, reporting and service requests. Basically, a lot of you probably already know this, but we have a graffiti hotline that's staffed during the week, 1-800-STOP-TAG. We also have the smartphone app, which is the My Santa Ana. It has a lot of other things on there that you can report, but it did originally start with the graffiti removal program from our graffiti removal contractor. What we like about that is it's real-time dispatching. So when you're sending in an app, it's going straight out to the technician. It's not coming through the city and then going to the technician. It goes straight to the technician. So that can be done in 24 hours. You can also leave a message on the graffiti hotline 24 hours, but again, we're not going to pick that message up until the staff comes in the next day. So one of the things nice about our contractor, sometimes there are graffiti spikes. We can't remove graffiti in the rain, things like that, so we have to refocus efforts, and they're very, they work with us on that. They'll increase staff. We've had to have them come in and do things like under the Caltrans Bridge and things like that. They have to bring in additional staff, and they'll do that for us on a case-by-case basis as needed. Normally, we like to say our standard response time is 48 hours. However, most of their removals, when it's a request for service, is done within 24 hours. Unless there's a reason they can't remove it, then it might go over the 24 hours. Most of their work is actually done as proactive, not reactive. They do, and I'll show you those numbers here in a few, but most of the work they're doing as they're going after service requests, they're removing graffiti on the way and along. So there's, like I said, there's 5 technicians out there working the different areas of the city. So now let's get into the stats. I was asked to present the last 2 years of stats. So what I did here is the first line item there, that's the graffiti location services. So I would call that like graffiti work orders. So basically the staff that I was talking about in 2017 did 118,000 work orders, and in 2018 they did 119,000. And the next line item, which is graffiti items removed, multiples per location. So when they go out and remove the graffiti, there might be 5 pieces of graffiti. So that's more like 161,000 tags is what I like to say was removed in 2017, and then in 2018 it was 155,000 pieces of graffiti, if you want to categorize it that way. And then I was talking to you about the proactive service. You see there, in 2017 we had 93,000 pieces of graffiti done, and then in 2018 it was 100,000. So that's proactive. So they're doing that just from every day. And then the My Santa Ana requests, 15,000 in 2017. That went up in 2018. That's been going up. We've been marketing it. More and more people are using the app for other things besides graffiti. But we've seen the trend is actually going up as far as using the app. And it's actually decreasing when it comes to the hotline. So we're getting less calls, more app requests. And then you'll see there are square footage removed, 2017, 3.9, and in 2018, 3.7. And if I remember right, Pedro, how many? 75 football fields is what that equates to. Okay, so graffiti removal by type, this is where I was talking about the trends. You can see in the lighter color, that's the app, so that's really gone up between the 2 years. from 9,900 service requests to 17,000. And almost opposite is the hotline. Those numbers are going down. But it kind of evens out over the 2-year total. But the trend really is more people are using the app to report graffiti. This picture here is 1 month of graffiti removal in, I think it was the month of March. So it just shows kind of how it shows us the data that we collect. Also hotspots. These are kind of our top 5 areas for graffiti removal. The number 1 there is Riverview West area. The number 2 is a little more in the city, center of the city, which is Artesia Pilar. 3 is the Lacey area. 4 is Memorial Park, and 5 is East Side. Additional efforts. One of the things that we are considering is establishing a punitive fine for when the offenders are caught. So over and above they pay restitution, we want to establish a $1,000, $3,000 fine that they'll pay at the time, when they arrested. This will help to deter and reduce the negative impacts of graffiti, and it will also help improve the quality of life. That's something we plan to take to council at a later date. So we don't have that on the books now, but we want to put that on the books. We do marketing of our program services. We do cleanup events. We've done graffiti paint-out days. We also do public service announcements via the media, the Nixle, and again through the app. I just wanted to give you a brief update on the enforcement efforts from our police department. We have 100 million pictures stored as evidence. That's basically since 2011. We have all that evidence in our database. And it's categorized by name and moniker. It shows our arrests. In 2017, we had 49 graffiti arrests. 2018, 30 graffiti arrests. So if we had that fine on the book, that'd be $30,000. So that would be, that's kind of what we're looking at. We're hoping we can get there. And then we also, let's see, what did I have here? 522. Oh, yes, the Heroes wall mural. I think maybe you were a part of that. At Washington at the.
Not tagging it. I was there for the. Sorry.
No, that's correct. That's correct. Graffiti offenders are charged with vandalism and assessed restitution by the courts for their damages, and we collect around 10,000 to 20,000 annually from arrests that are made for graffiti. And so with that, that's my report, and I'm happy to
I have a
answer
quick
questions.
question for
Sure.
you, Ms. Mercado. So, on the fines, on the fine program, the punitive fine, are we going to bring in this to us as a model from another city, or are they going after the parents? Did we finding out, are these people
It would be the parents if it
underage?
was a juvenile.
Right?
It would be the adults if they're an adult. We have been looking at other cities. We're going to bring all that information. Yes, we want to model it after other cities.
Have we ever had that in the past?
Not here in our city,
Not in our city.
but in other cities they have.
Okay.
It's a difference between a
Don't
fine.
speak out of line.
It-
Don't speak out of line. Ms.
This
Mercado
is-
has the floor.
This is administrative fine, over and above the restitution.
I see. Very good. Okay,
Yeah,
Vice Chair Penalosa?
I have some questions. Thank you for this. This was very informative. And this might not be a question for you, or I'm not sure exactly where I would. For the scheduling, I feel like more people, if we could get a report of what days of the week residents are more likely to use the app to submit graffiti requests, because I'm thinking Monday through Friday, and this comes with the scheduling, how we have 6 staff that are actively going out and reporting to the app submissions, and then only 1 on the weekends.
Correct.
I'm just thinking, more people are at home, driving around, doing chores, more free time on their hands to actually stop and take a picture of something that they see in their neighborhood, versus during the week, Monday through Friday, I'm rushing out of my house at 8 in the morning. I see graffiti sometimes. I'm like, I'm late. I can't even be bothered by that. And is there a way that we could maybe look at the scheduling and maybe bring back or bring 2 to the weekend and 5 during Monday through Friday?
Okay, just make sure I understand. You're talking about the scheduling of the text.
Yeah, the
Okay.
text.
At first I thought you were talking about the app. Okay, you mean like maybe as far as not have 5 during the day, maybe switch it to where they're working more on the weekends? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah,
maybe?
because right now you said
Okay.
that there's currently only 1 that works on the weekends,
Right.
And I feel like people are more likely to do a submission on the weekends,
weekends.
because they're home, they're driving around, they're within the city and not just going out to work. So how was, I just was asking how was this scheduling, how did they come up with the scheduling of the?
We've had that scheduling since 2009. I started in Public Works in 2007, and we set that up in 2009 because as I'm trying to remember back that far, to be quite honest, but it's easier to get around and get to the things during the city during the day when they're but on the weekends there's a lot of activities, like in the parks. We have to do a lot of the removal during the week, so that's why we have more people here during the week as opposed to the weekend.
Okay.
But you're probably right as far as
maybe if we could reach out to the contractor and test it out. Be like, hey, you know what? For this month, can we maybe do 2 on the weekends and only 5 during the week? So we could, because I know there's a lot of activity during the weekend where people are more likely to submit graffiti through the app.
So a shift to some extent. Is kind of what
Yeah,
you're
just
saying.
kind of test it out if there is a need. I'm sure there is all days of the week.
Yes.
And so that's that. And then with the other comment I had, just in the map that you used, why are you guys using why are you guys not using the current ward boundaries on this map?
Actually, I can do that. I can actually do a ward boundary map as well. This is just the whole city, that particular map that I did.
Yeah, I know, but these different coordinates, aren't these the new boundaries?
Let me go back to
no,
that.
Never mind.
No,
they're
those
not.
have nothing. You're right. Those have nothing to do with the boundaries.
What are those different colors?
Well, let me see. That's actually the zones, and we have actually tweaked those quite a bit over the years based on the need and where the most graffiti is. So you'll see, like in the green zone up on the top left, we call that zone 2.
Oh, okay.
Not as much graffiti. So we had to, at one point, we extended it further to Flower. It was to Bristol, because zone 1 up in the top right was getting more graffiti. So it gets tweaked based on the need, and so that they can perform the graffiti removal services. You'll see in the middle there, see the blue, the center of the city? That's where we get the most graffiti. He's got the smallest area.
Mm-hmm.
So has no base on the wards at all.
Oh, okay.
It's not based on the wards.
And with this app, I know that, and I've seen the beta that they're redeveloping the app, which looks great, moving in that right direction. Now, are we gonna be able to do all of this through the new app as well?
Yes, actually, graffiti. This database will still stay intact. The app will just, when the new app is developed and out there, to the customers, you won't see anything different. You'll still report your graffiti through that new app, and it'll go into this database, and we'll still, on the field side, we'll still have all the same information. So it won't change that part.
And final question, so we could move on from this. So 119,000 graffiti locations were serviced in 2018, but only, and I know this is not the graffiti removal contractor, but only 30 arrests were made in the entire year related to graffiti. Right now, I'm just thinking out loud a little bit. So I'm just surprised. Why is graffiti still? I mean, why is a spray can still even legal? That's what I want to know. We ban everything and things that. But anyways. Yeah, so only 30 graffiti arrests compared. I mean, that's a lot of graffiti removal, but only 30 arrests. I don't know if we want to. I mean, I know we're
that to the police department on their efforts.
Yeah, we had, with regards to the decrease, I can share that we did go for a period of time without a detective assigned to follow up on these cases, because when we're talking about prioritizing crimes against persons to property crime, we're going to start with property crime and work our way to our crimes against persons first, and then go to property crime.
I know at one point, I'm not sure if we still are doing this, we were rewarding residents that would lead to the capture of a I guess a graffiti, I don't want to call him artist, a gangbanger that was tagging up our walls. Is that still in place? Is that still a program that we do, or how?
Yes, that's still in place. We just did one just recently.
And the resident actually gets rewarded, and there's an arrest made.
Yeah, I don't know what the amount is. What's the amount?
So
couple $100, $500
we
max.
we have Sergeant Sarabia who can speak specifically to that program and answer any questions. Would you like him to come?
Please, yeah. Just that I don't know anything about it. I don't know how it operates.
Hi, good evening, Mouse Robert. Yes, good evening. So the reward is a $500 amount, and I think we just issued one a few days ago, and I have another one pending for May. That is the full cooperation, the arrest, and it also deals with the prosecution of that individual. So, in many times, and you could understand with these cases, you don't have full cooperation from the victims based out of fear, possible retaliation. So that isn't a factor in a lot of the times. But we do issue them. Like I said, I'm ready to issue another one in May. The case should be adjudicated up on the 27th of May, and I'll send it over to Donnell, and we'll get that issued. So that is something that is available. In response to the arrests, again, this is a crime that has to be assigned by priority. And in many cases, as a sergeant of that unit and with 2 detectives, I do have to look at each one on its face and assign it by priority. But a lot of these cases do get solved by the gang unit in a sense where they use that database, which indicates it's stored as evidence to identify other individuals. In the Among Heroes wall mural, we use that database to identify that individual, but there's much more to that. It's okay, we know who this person is, but on a misdemeanor case, will this person confess or admit that he did that, unless there's that witness that will say this person did that. It's a very difficult case to submit. We have other diversion programs. I know the school police has been using a diversion program, so a lot of those cases may not show up as arrests because now they're getting diverted through the school system. And the school, if you can imagine, they're going to have the bulk of these type of cases. So that's why that number, I suspect, is much smaller.
So I remember always seeing those signs everywhere.
Yes, sir.
Help report and the capture of a tagger, and you'll get rewarded. But I don't think I see them anymore. Were those signs removed?
You mean like signs out in the...
Yeah, like there used to be the aluminum placard street signs notifying residents, hey, if you $500 reward if there's if you help us with the capture of a tagger. Are those signs still up? I
I'm not
don't
aware
think
of
I
the
see
signs.
them anymore.
I know that we've
But they
got
used
that
to
on the
be up.
website. It's on the website.
I do recall the signs. I have not seen any of the signs recently.
Yeah.
But it's something certainly we can revisit. It's just a standard advisory.
Right. But I mean,
English,
I feel like
Spanish.
that could help deter taggers, and at the same time, I just don't know why they were removed. Alvaro, do you know why they were removed? Okay. Thank you all.
My comments are that we have to remember that these tagging incidents don't happen on their own. These are individuals. These are humans, usually done by youth. Usually they're done by gang members or wannabe gang members, all these kinds of groups that want to cause trouble. And we need to continue with the prevention and, of course, our gang unit out there and diversion programs where I know Sergeant Sarabia and I worked together in some of those programs through the Project Youth and Orange County Bar Foundation. And this is a big problem, but this is a big city also. 338,000 people, and you understand we have a gang problem. It's been going on for decades. These things are going to happen. We're just going to continue the good work. I want to thank Ms. Mercado for the presentation, and I would like to see if there's a way for us to increase the funds going to that, to have more people working on these issues. I know we have a 48-hour turnaround rate. That's not too bad, but if we could do it even sooner or faster, it'd be great. Because I know we have 1.7 million allocated annually, and I got here 2.5 years ago, and it was still 1.7 million.
Right.
So maybe we ought to see what we can, have a discussion about increasing that in the budget, because it is a priority. It does deter. The faster you get to it, the less reoccurrence. But we have to understand that, this is done by a few individuals, and it's just awful. But we need to continue to address it, and the families need to address it. I would love to see parents step up and deal with this problem at home, find out where their kids are so they won't be out there doing this kind of stuff. Thank you very much. You have another final comment.
And with that said, I agree with what Mayor Pro Tem Villegas said, but also maybe look into the contractor and maybe a audit of some sort if we've never done one, or if not, if they are actively removed. Because I've heard concerns from residents. Some are in the room, some aren't. That the response is barely there for a lot of these different graffiti removals, and if that's the case, we should look at that as well.
Yeah.
So definitely see if we could maybe audit or have some kind of inspection, if you will. I know that requires more personnel, but just kind of make sure that the company is, because how do they bill us? Is it just a blank 1.7 million check every year, or is it per incident?
It's per the staff, so it's the 5 technicians and the extra one for parks, and then the weekend staff. So that's how it's billed. So and then they have a cap. There's a certain amount that they have to remove each person, and they way exceed it. So they way exceed the amount of graffiti that has to be removed by each staff member. So it is by staff. So to Mayor Pro Tem, where you were saying about additional funding, if we can find it, we can add more individuals based on the way the contract's written, but we have to have those funds. But as far as auditing, we actually, on a weekly basis, we pull reports and we pull them to make sure they're meeting the 48-hour, which they're usually exceeding. An external audit is another good idea, external inspections. We can look at that as well. We meet on a weekly basis out in the field with our crew leader, but we haven't had him for a couple months, so but we just got one hired, so we'll hopefully have them here in another month.
So that could probably improve.
That'll help for the inspections out in the field. But yeah, we audit them on a weekly basis based on response time, how much they're removing, etc.
And they do submit before and after pictures.
They submit before and after pictures on all service requests.
Okay.
So we always have a before and after, but the proactive, it's a picture of the graffiti that goes into the database.
Got it. Okay.
For the evidence purposes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mercado.
Janelle,
Acting City Manager.
What happens when we call you instead of going through the service request? Do we mess you up?
You do.
Okay.
You delay the service because if I'm at meetings or things like that, I can't respond. It's much better to just call the hotline or use the app. That's your best way to get it serviced.
Thank you very much. Thank you to your staff also.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item number 6 of cyber cafes, and we have the Code Enforcement Manager, Alvaro Nunez. Dr. Nunez.
So we don't have a formal presentation because we're just going to give a brief update.
You also don't have a mic?
That's right. How about now?
There you go, sir. If you can state your name for the record.
Alvaro Nunez, Code Enforcement Manager.
Thank you, sir.
And the Deputy Chief Ken Kaminsky will assist. We don't have a formal presentation because we are just going to provide an update. We'll bring a formal request and for direction at a later time. Currently, we have between the police department and code enforcement and in collaboration with the city attorney's office, we are conducting active enforcement action, maybe approximately 35 cyber cafes / illegal gaming businesses. So what we're dealing with is not the traditional cafe in internet, right? So this is mostly dealing with folks that come under our guise, apply for a business license, indicating they are going to be a cyber cafe, offer some internet aspects, and actually leading to providing gaming that attract other illegal criminal activities.
So at this point, the city of Santa Ana has a moratorium while we evaluate what the city should do moving forward. I can speak on behalf of myself and Manager Nunez that we believe that moving forward, we should ban internet cyber cafes and move in that direction. The information will have to go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will have to review it and make determinations. However, years ago I had discussions with the then planning director and his assistant. And at that time, cyber cafes as a business didn't make a lot of sense. The idea that we had to have places where the general public could go and access the internet, it didn't make sense then. But now, even as a business model, when you look at the concept of an internet cafe, where you pay for the right to use a computer, even on its face as a legal business, an internet cafe, I have yet to locate and determine a business model that works. Right now, we have the free phones from the federal government. Virtually everybody has a phone now, has access to the internet. So the idea that I would go to a location and then access a computer so I could get my information or do my homework, the business model doesn't work. And because that business model doesn't work, even an individual or a business that wish to operate legally will eventually have to be co-opted to what these places have actually become, which is casinos. They have anywhere between 5 to 24 gambling machines. We consistently go out, our vice unit consistently goes out and has to serve warrants on these gambling locations. I know that the City Council is well aware of the community complaints and issues that surround these locations. Our gang unit has made numerous arrests of individuals with guns and narcotics leaving these locations because they become de facto unregulated, unpoliced, unsecuritied casinos. As we move forward and continue to look at this, and Alvaro said that there are anywhere between 30 and 35 of these locations currently operating within the city, it is an extremely manpower-intensive investigation. But on top of that, we truly need to remember that all of the equipment that is taken from these locations has to be stored somewhere. I am currently in the process of trying to find additional space because I don't have any more space for any more of these casino machines. We are tapped out in our evidence section. If I can't find a cheaper choice, I'm going to be coming back to the City Council. The chief's going to be coming back to the City Council to request money so we can lease space. We have run out of space. Depending upon how the prosecution of these cases go forward, we're required to keep this property for sometimes up to 3 years. When you're talking about 20 to 25 machines that are as big as the tables that sit in front of you, we run out of space relatively quickly. In an effort to prove a gambling case, if we choose not to keep the entire machine, we are required to do a forensic auditing of the machine. Each one of those machines, it would cost about $10,000 to do the forensic audit. It's done by the same people that monitor the Indian casinos to ensure that those machines are, in fact, gambling machines as well. So the business that we're engaged in now in trying to eradicate cyber cafes / casinos is extremely manpower intensive and costly to the city of Santa Ana. And if we continue to allow more cyber cafes, again, with no business plan that I can understand would work, we will continue to hemorrhage manpower and money towards eradicating this public safety issue.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. You have any questions on this update?
Not questions, just more just general comments about the so forensic. Well, I guess it is a question. So forensic audit of the machine, the gambling machines, would be to find out if these machines were indeed used for gambling. Is that what that's what I'm understanding? Is that
So if I choose as evidence not to have to keep the machine for trial purposes and until the case is completely adjudicated, I can get rid of the machine if I pay $10,000 for the forensic audit.
Oh, okay.
It's an either or.
Right. Okay. Now I see. Okay. And I guess that answered my question. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the update. We're going to move on to item number 7, which is the 911 calls made from the courtyard shelter.
Really quick, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Alvaro, like I mentioned before, it's important that we, and I've mentioned this to the chief, advertise all these closures. Push them out there. Make sure the public knows that we're shutting these things down.
And the idea why we're doing it this way, because we still have active enforcement, not just with court enforcement, but concentrated police enforcement actions. But we'll send at least notable communications, brief updates, so at least people get the general picture that we are responding, that we are addressing them, and that we're doing what we're supposed to.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Like I said, item number 7, 911 calls made from the courtyard shelter. We have Deputy Chief Kaminsky and Chief Henry from OCFA. Gentlemen.
Yeah, good evening. I've got some statistical data that we can share, but I think what I want to say to start off with is our calls for service to the courtyard, 400 West Santa Ana, are going down. And that's being done because of some outreach that our agency has done with the Midnight Mission group in trying to educate their staff and utilizing 911 appropriately and moving forward that way. So that's the good news. When this popped up on the agenda, I wasn't sure exactly what we wanted, other than I can tell you that we're averaging about 1.6 calls a day. That's down from last year, where we're averaging almost 3 calls a day. So we are making some strides there. Percentages that I don't think will matter much to the group is the majority of our calls are for basic life support as opposed to when they need paramedics. So we're continuing to respond. How does that impact the area? When the city contracted with Orange County Fire, one of the tenets of that process was to have all of our units that respond and provides EMS service to have paramedics on it. So with that piece there really isn't a change. The nearest unit that services that area is paramedics, and the whole city has paramedics on all of its fire engines and ladder trucks. So there really wasn't much of a change there. So we've done a lot of outreach, and Chief Black, Assistant Chief Black, is here to also give some historical perspective to that. He was the division chief prior to my assignment here, and also his division is the EMS services of our agency, and our nurse educators have gone out and done a lot of outreach in assisting that. The courtyard itself and part of the county staff has got nursing services that come out and in a weekly to assist with blood pressure checks and med management and stuff. And also the mission has some transportation services that are outside of the 911, such as Uber and taxi vouchers that can provide some services there. So if there is something that I can answer specifically as related to some of the calls that we go there, or there's something specific that you're looking for from either myself or Chief Kaminsky, I'd be fairly ready to answer those. Or if there's something they just wanted to report, and I can make this available to you as well. But I'm looking for some direction when I saw this pop up.
Thank you, Chief. We wanted to find out how many calls. I remember hearing that this is the #1 area in the city that receives calls for service. then again, we look at the nature of what it is. There's a lot of people in one area. A lot of people are ill. Is the county? Does the county have any medical personnel stationed at the courtyard by any chance?
It's my understanding that they aren't there all the time, but they do have staff that do come in. Is that correct, Chief?
And Chief Black, welcome. Nice to see you again, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, there is not staff that is 24/7 assigned to the courtyard facility. They have 2 services that come in. Each of those services come in twice a week, but it is not even full 40-hour work week coverage at the courtyard.
So the services are provided by who? The county health?
They are provided by the county health department.
What kind of services do they offer?
Nursing and nurse practitioner services.
And that's aside from the mental health also, correct?
That is completely separate from the mental health services that are provided.
I see. And you wanted to provide, you had some history. My colleague here doesn't have a...
I think Chief Henry did a good job providing history when you think back a couple years ago, October of 2016, when the courtyard opened. As it ramped up in its size and scale, we saw, you're dealing with medically fragile people. They're coming off of the streets and they have various issues, many of which either end up being or start off as medical issues of frailty and compromise. So they are a user of the 911 system, oftentimes appropriately. When we had the situation where we cleared the riverbed and the Plaza of the Flags, obviously, I think we saw a pretty significant surge, and that's what got us up to that 3 times per day. At its height, it was the number 1 or 2 highest single address point in our system. So anytime we have a location like that, we want to meet with that facility. This being the county facility, we want to meet with them and see what we can do to make sure that the calls for service are appropriate use of 911, because there's always a percentage. Anytime you're dealing with 3 calls a day, you're going to have some percentage of those calls that are, for instance, a call where someone needs their medications refilled. That's not an appropriate use of the 911 system. And as Chief Henry mentioned, we sat down with the county and with the Midnight Mission on 2 separate occasions. We tasked our nurse educator, which is well outside of their normal work. We tasked them to meet with the staff over there and to educate the Midnight Mission in how to use the 911 system and how to encourage their residents of the facility to use the facility personnel first, and to help to alleviate unnecessary 911 calls.
I think one of the things that the group over there tries to do is if a resident needs to access 911, they've been asked when they come into the facility to please make their staff notify that and available. You know that it's the law. You can have a cell phone that does not have a cell service that can still be accessed 911 system. So a lot of these times that service, that those people, the actual residents are making 911 calls for service, and the people at the facility aren't even aware of it until we show up, lights and siren, and then we come walking in and our staff immediately engages them and goes, and they're like, we weren't even aware that you were called. So we will always have that being an ongoing issue. So.
Do we have, for staff, do we have a contract for ambulance service?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
And how often do they report to the courtyard? Do we know by any chance? I know.
No, I haven't ever retrieved that information. I certainly can for you.
Yeah. I thought we had Care Ambulance, I believe, is someone that so we might want to look into how many times they respond. Is that different than the fire department also?
No, it is and it isn't, right? So whenever we dispatch a resource for what we believe to be a medical call, our dispatch center always assigns an ambulance to that call. So every time we go there for a medical call, I can tell you there's an ambulance responding. Now, you can access ambulances outside of the 911 system by going direct to that agency that has ambulances to ask them, hey, can you provide a transport vehicle? And people do that all the time outside of 911. So I couldn't give you those stats, but I'm sure we can contact CARE and find out how often they respond because they keep those records too. But I can tell you every time we send a 911 response for EMS, an ambulance is being added to it. So
Very good. Very good. Councilmember Penalosa, you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. Just want to thank you both for that update.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chief Kaminsky, is there anything you want, Deputy Chief Kaminsky, you want to add anything regarding the courtyard?
No, not at this time, then.
Thank you, sir. All right, excellent. Let's move on to item number 8, which is the update on the homelessness response.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, we will be asking Hafsa Kekena to provide you a report on this.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, committee members and council members. So my name is Hafsa Keka, and I'm the Homeless Service Manager for the city. I'm going to make this very, very brief in the interest of time and all these several public meetings that have been talked about for homelessness. So real quick, our last meeting for this committee meeting was in October 1st, and so I'm just going to kind of discuss some of the major updates as of October 1st. So the biggest update is the LINK, the 200-bed shelter. That is a city's shelter that was commenced in mid-November. It's a 200-bed shelter, and following the construction of the shelter, which was a true amazing 28-day operation with all of the directors from different interdepartmental teams that came together, worked with the owner, worked with the Mercy House as the operator to really make this a feat, and also especially the director of Public Works, Fawad, who led Operation Launchpad. We were able to successfully commence it. There is a data dashboard, and that's updated daily. And as of today, there's about 180 some folks that are enrolled with 150 bed nights. That means that's a great, wonderful work that has been done. Following the November commencement of the LINK, there was 2 major operations that was led by the Santa Ana PD Heart and Colt team, which was Operation Dignity and Operation Safe Passage. That was 4 a.m. in the morning. A lot of folks came together and it didn't end until 10, sometimes 12 midnight. And we were able to increase the capacity of individuals experiencing homelessness off the streets and into the shelter. Let's see. Let me just look at my... After that, we also had, the Armory had also started after that with the cold weather. The city did provide a public stance that we did not want that to happen. It did, and it's closed now. Also, the Santa Ana participation in the point in time count, which we should be receiving the results fairly shortly. The county will be releasing that. And also, the county closed escrow on the Yale site. There's been many conversations about that. Staff is waiting on council direction on that. Judge Carter hearing. Judge is very pleased with the city of Santa Ana and everything we've done. He's tasked the South cities to step up and create shelters, and the city is regularly meeting on the Santiago Bridge and also Railroad to ensure that people are off the streets and into shelter and that enforcement can happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hafsa. Well, that was just a record. All right. Okay, is there any questions from my colleagues?
No questions for Hafsa.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the committee member comments. Council member,
Mr. Chair, really, before we move on, I know that there was some members of the public that still wanted to speak on a couple of items. Is that possible?
We didn't receive, I'll allow it if they fill out a card.
Oh, okay. Did you guys?
Do we have a member from the public that'd like to make a comment? We'll allow it.
Just briefly.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Just briefly. The reason we've got a graffiti problem is because we're not doing the right things.
Come to the mic.
Fair enough.
Everyone else is doing it, so.
If you guys can hear me.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, but we need it recorded.
All right, this is kind of ridiculous. The reason we have a graffiti problem is because we're not doing the right thing. When was the last time we had a community-wide graffiti paint-out day? Anybody here know? Exactly. We should be having those 2, 3, 4 times a year. The first one we put together in this city that I organized had 150 people show up. 150 first time out. Now we're lucky to get 3 or 4 or 5 people that show up to paint out graffiti. Because the people that organize it, that were here, that read you their statistics, don't know what they're doing. 30 arrests is terrible. 2008, 2009, when I put together with Steve McGuigan and the community, we wrote the ordinance, the graffiti ordinance. I wrote it. I know what's in it. We can already do what they're wanting to do about finding people. It's there already. We had 489 arrests that year. Go back and look. 489 graffiti arrests in 2008, 2009. Look it up. What happened that we went from 489 to 30? What happened that we went to $10,000? This year it was 10,000 and change recovery. 10,000 and change on $1 million worth of graffiti. We spend $1 million and get 10,000. We're supposed to do cost recovery. It's called you spray, you pay. That's the name of the ordinance. So are we not going into court and not asking the judge to give us restitution? Are we not demanding that we enforce the law that calls for public service? 40 hours minimum. How many of those 30 people that we arrested this year did public service? How many? 0. Let me give you another stat. The graffiti statistics on the Graffiti Task Force website were blank for an entire year. For an entire year, they couldn't be bothered to update their statistics. And then they give you nice round numbers, 110,000 square feet, 115,000 square feet. I find that very peculiar. Let's do things the right way. If you guys want to know about the law, ask me. I wrote it.
Thank you, sir. Don't forget to fill out your speaker card. Is there any other speakers? Come forward, please. Welcome.
I'm Evangeline Goronsky, and we wrote this program before Gordon did, okay? Back at the very beginning when I was in charge of citywide COP. One of the things, by the way, I'm the one that wrote that note. I forgot to sign my name. One thing that we did way back then was to try and deter the problem of the kids getting into the paint cans in the stores was to go around and find with a D, the stores who kept their gates open so that anybody could just walk in and take a spray can. Irma and I right now, we're police volunteers, go around and check these too. One, then what we would do would be to take the name down and fine the store that is responsible for leaving their doors open. Home Depot on East Enninger is very, what's the word I want here? Not responsible, but the ones who leave it open all the time. Last week, Irma and I were there, and all 3 doors were completely open, and I had to call for the manager, and I told him to lock those doors right now, or you will be fined. Way back then in the 80s or 90s when we got this started, Lieutenant Magdalena was on the area at the time, and he went out there and fined them right away. Are we still finding stores that do that, and who is responsible for that? Is it police or is it code enforcement? Period. I beg your pardon?
Comment. It's a comment, so continue, please.
I also have a question. That was my question.
We're not having discussion, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, could somebody here please find out for me and let me know? So that when we go out there and tell them, we're not bluffing because we really do mean it. Because those doors got locked really fast the other day. And someone also asked a question, who would get the fine? Would the manager of the store get the fine or would Home Depot get the fine? Okay, and that's just one store I'm using as an example. A lot of them sell the spray cans. Okay, so there's a comment and a question in it, so if somebody can find out, I'd be glad to know the answer. So when we go out as police volunteers and check these places, we know what we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
We will honor your request for the information. Thank you. Ms. Fonseca?
Just very quickly, in the interest of fairness, and it is on the topic of the graffiti removal, again, living in Articia Pilar, we do have a major issue with F-Troop, and I tried to be vigilant about calling it in. In my experience, the graffiti removal is the one department that is doing an excellent job. I'm talking about, I will call it in, say it's 9 in the morning. I'll head out of my house, it's 9:40, the guy's out there painting. I'm not exaggerating. The other day I called in, there were literally like 8 different spots at Efter Patag, telephone poles, signs. They were out there within a day, not 48 hours. I commended them as they walked out right now. So at least, again, in my experience, under 40, that's not animal control, code enforcement. Nobody responds like that. So I'm just letting you know, in my area, they're doing a very excellent job.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move on. No more comments. We're going to go ahead and move on with the committee member comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone that spoke, staff. And I would agree with and this was before I was a council member, before I was a candidate, so it wasn't biased, but I always had a prompt response time with the app personally. With that said, there was a couple comments made earlier, Mr. Schmidt, about the Cypress Fire Station. And I actually just, when was it, last week on Thursday, that I met with, with Director Lisa Rudloff from Parks and Rec and Mr. Ron Ono to go over just the history of the Cypress Fire Station, because, again, I don't know the history of it, and that's what I'm trying to do half the time is just catch up on a lot of history of different various issues throughout our city. So it's high on our radar, the Cypress Fire Station. I'm personally making it high on everyone's radar to look at what we could possibly do. The questions that I brought up is, if a business or homeowner has their yard unkempt and it lives, trash-filled yard, the city's going to fine them. So why are these city properties like the Cypress Fire Station, the YMCA building, why are they allowed to just kind of deteriorate and there is no who's finding the city? I brought it up to Lisa and I said we should find ourselves. I know that sounds silly, but it's the idea of we should also practice what we preach and go around all these different city properties and try to at least keep them upkept. So I'm going to be bringing it up before our council. To study how we could reuse that facility, since it is a historic building along, kind of like similar what we're doing with the YMCA building. So just know that it's on our radar, and we're looking at different ways that we could put that building to use and clean it up. I even mentioned, I don't know if you brought it up to Alvaro, but even having some kind of a code enforcement substation or some substation to one of our departments where we could have daily activity. That way it deters homeless, deters graffiti, individual gangbangers and whatnot. With that said, there was a lot of, again, I just wanted to, back to our chief and Deputy Chief Esparza, the hiring is important. I know you guys are really, really upping up the efforts, and I appreciate that, and let's continue doing that, and kind of social media, again, I'm going to keep preach it. The only millennial on the council, so I'm going to play that card all the time with the social media. It's important, and looking at ways where we could target and really put out a message, whether it's hiring, whether it's PR, Alvaro, with all the work that you guys are doing. And I don't want to hear the lack of staff. And Alvaro, his department is the only department that's never personally told me, we don't have enough staff to do this. We don't have. So I want to give him kudos because he is, they're out there and they're hustling. And I know we all are, but just keep that in mind that, we're working on it and in regards to staffing, and that's important. And that was it for now. Again, this is my first public safety meeting, so I'm trying to wrap my head around the different items that we discussed. Back to the graffiti question. That's why I also, Mr. Mendoza, if you could make sure that we could have some kind of audit, because if there are residents that are not seeing active response, I would like to look into it at least to make sure that the response times are there, and different ways how we could play with the scheduling. And that's it for this now. I'm hoping that at the next, not the next Public Safety Committee meeting, because that's not till June, right, Mayor Pro Tem?
June 11th.
Yeah, we could Alvaro, can I give direction here with the Alvaro, if we could have a kind of an update on the railroads probably at the next council meeting and the Union Pacific. I know we're seeking legal action, and I know you're building a case and you're doing a great job from what I've seen. So definitely want to get an update on that before our council, maybe in the next council meeting, if you can. And that's about it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. My comments, I want to thank all the public for coming out here, and I want to thank all of the staff for the great work. I know it's a lot. I know this is a special Public Safety Committee meeting that we're having, and so that's why we just needed to address some of these and get some updates. I want to thank Ms. Esther Fonseca for coming out today. I know she helped a great deal along with our city attorney, deputy city attorney, Bogosian, and the chief and Deputy Chief Kaminsky helping on this loud music ordinance. It was a lot of work. I saw them. They were constantly coming back, and I really, really appreciate it. And I believe Chief and City Manager Mendoza, the reason our officers haven't been citing is because I'm told we have to wait 30 days from the second reading, and so that's why there's no citations being issued. But we want to make sure that these our officers, are on board and know what's going on. That we need to have them start citing and handling the business.
Correct. May 3rd.
Yeah. So I just wanted to briefly talk on that, and we'll see what happens after May 2nd. See how many citations we get. I don't want to give tickets. I don't want anyone to go out there and receive them, but these things happen. People have the music, and we also have our habitual offenders out there who are playing the music every weekend and having bands. And I know because I suffer from it, in my area. So we'll see how that goes. I also want to address one of the things about the graffiti that we're talking about earlier. One of the constituents, concerned members of the public, speaking on this. In 2008, we were 100 officers stronger. In 2008, we were 500 city employees stronger also. Right now, speaking with Alvaro Nunez, Dr. Nunez over here, as I call him, code enforcement, you had 28 people back then. 28. Mm-hmm. You have 15 right now. I don't think we have enough to put us people in a substation right now, but
we hired.
We've been trying to hire. We're trying to hire. So that's the reality. Another thing, real quick before we end, the chief and I have been talking, and to address the homeless issue across the city and cleanliness and all that, we don't need the police officers out there throwing junk in the trunk of the cars and moving around. We need a couple of flatbeds, trucks, and I think we should have a discussion about that at the next meeting. And I know we have a new city manager coming. And yes, sir?
We've actually prepared in advance of that transition. HOFSA has worked very close with all the departments to bring you a COLT budget, a dedicated COLT budget, how much it'll cost next year to fund it to the current levels. It doesn't mean you can't go above those levels, but that includes cars, vehicles, materials, storage, all of those things. So we put together an entire budget, and we're going to ask the city manager to include it in the first budget that's presented to you.
Great.
So you can actually see the cost of this service that we're providing. And, we're providing it by robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're removing a public works employee to man a vehicle right now. We're removing recreation staff from what they should be doing to be on COLT. What we need to do is have a dedicated COLT team. So what we've done is run the numbers. So we're prepared to present those numbers to you at the first time you see the
members of the
next
public that don't know what a COLT team is.
Quality of life team. It's a team that are addressing these encampments, or what we think may start up as encampments and expand. And they're constantly working on that. It's a mix of police officers, public safety officials, code enforcement, public works, recreation, and then Orange County Health and we're looking to bring that to you separately.
And hopefully we can get some Measure X money going towards that to,
we're
to address those homeless issues and the cleanliness of the city.
We think that's the cure. We're providing the cost. Council and the new city manager will provide the funding.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Acting City Manager. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and the next meeting is Tuesday, June 11th, 2019. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Too easy.